Welcome back to another episode of RNT Fitness Radio, and today I'm recording my first ever solo podcast. It's an experiment that took me way out of my comfort zone as I dove deep into the mission, vision and values of RNT, the journey, my struggles, my mistakes and my why. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this one as I speak very candidly and don't hold back. So without further ado, let's dive in. So I'm currently sitting in Penley Manor. It's a place in the Cheshire Hills, which for anyone who's not in the UK is a countryside area not too far from London, about 45-minute drive, but it really does take you into the middle of nowhere where you can instantly download and just relax. And I came here last night just to recharge the batteries, slept for 12 and a half hours, and probably had the best night's sleep I've had all year. And then this morning I spent an hour journaling over some coffee, went for a nice long walk in the fields where I got completely lost, and I had to ask some farmers who I came across, how do I get out of this place and back to the manor? Because essentially I was in a field which was just trapped by fences all around. So yeah, it was an interesting morning, and I've come back here and I thought I'd do something I've not done before, and something which, to be honest, does take me right out of my comfort zone. If I look back about a year ago, the podcast was something I never took a massive interest in, if I'm being completely honest. And it was probably because I wasn't hosting it. I was taking part in it, but never essentially pulling the strings with it. But when I took it over in September, it started off very much continuing in the fashion it used to be, which was very much planned Q&A style interviews. But as the years gone by, I've really grown to love the podcast, and I'm really enjoying the art of podcasting, learning how to do it better, seeing how other very successful podcasters hold the mic. And what I mean by that is their ability to hold a conversation, hold a solo podcast, and steer the conversation in the way they want to. And so over the past year, I've really studied it a lot more, and I'm really passionate about podcasting now. But what I was finding is, as I transitioned from the planned, structured Q&A style ones to the conversational ones, which I think have gained a lot more positive feedback, is there's always been one style of podcasting which I've not attempted, and that's been the solo podcast and being able to hold an episode completely on my own. So I thought today is a good day to do it because I'm recharged, I'm in the middle of nowhere, and I thought while I was walking, today would be a good day to try it out. Now, if it flops, then I know I should just stick to having guests on the show. But I'm very interested to see how this one goes, and I'll be very curious to know your feedback. So this is completely off the cuff, unplanned, and yeah, I'm just going to see where it takes us. I've got a few topics in mind I want to cover, and it's come from some of the Q&As I've had recently. I did put out on Instagram last week that I was thinking of doing a solo podcast. So if you had any questions that required or had a more deeper emphasis to it, I would take it to the solo podcast. So quite a few things have come out of this, and a lot of the questions that I didn't answer on story because I wanted to keep it for today revolved around the company story, the company mission, what our key values are, some of my own struggles with business, with general life, some of the mistakes I've made. And I thought these were really interesting topics to dive into. And I thought today I would just, while I was journaling this morning, I thought I'd explore them a little bit more. And then while I was walking, I was thinking about the answers to these questions. Some of them are more crystallized in my head, such as the mission and the values that we go by. But others required a lot more introspection with regards to the mistakes and some of the struggles. So Hopefully this is of value. And if you can relate to anything I discussed today, it'd be great to hear from you and open up a discussion about any of the topics that I make. So what I want to start with is just give you a very brief synopsis of why RNT started and what we're here to do. Now, as many of you know, we started RNT in May 2017, and it was out of a deep frustration with the online personal training industry, where there was no consistency in real results, in real people living real lives. There was an abundance of terrible customer service and a plethora of cookie cutter programming, whereby no one was really getting a plan that was designed for them. And in a world full of ebooks, PDFs, and cookie cutter plans, generic plans, we wanted to come up with something that was a little bit more specific and more special and purely focused on results. And ultimately what we did is we set out to create the number one-to-one online platform available worldwide to enable busy, regular people, just like many of you listening here, achieve spectacular, life-changing results all online, and all while having a remarkable, personalized experience. And since 2017, we've got a now global team of, I must say, high-performing coaches, and we've helped change over 1,300 lives across 16 countries across the world, which to me is still mind-boggling when I think about that. The amount of people we've touched and whose transformations they've then gone on to inspire and create a domino effect around is truly humbling and remarkable for myself to sit back and reflect on. And ultimately, the vision we have is to see a world where everyone experiences the power of the physical focus to act as a vehicle for the greater good for themselves. And that's ultimately our mission, which is to use the physical as a vehicle to transform your life. And I'm going to talk about this in a lot more depth as the podcast unravels. But what I want to start with is how we've managed to produce the incredible transformations you see on the website, you hear about on the podcast, you see on social media. And I really do think a lot of it comes down to the core values that each and every one of us at RNT embody and aim to cascade across everyone we come across with. And they are impact, service, self-mastery, community, and lifestyle. And I'm going to touch on to each one now, starting with impact. And everything we do is about creating maximum impact in the lives of our team and our clients. I mean, we are results obsessed, and that's why it's the first word of our name, Results Now Training. And we're committed to continuously learning, understanding, and creating the best coaching practices, content materials, and communication methods to facilitate as much life-changing impact as possible. So that's our first value, which is impact and ultimately results that we can create. The second one is service. Now, every day across our coaching conversations and our various media channels, we're always looking to serve, build rapport, and provide a remarkable service. And it's why we're so fixated against the cookie cutter programming. And it's why all our content online is free. We've got 200 plus articles, as of recording this, 90 plus podcasts, and over 250 YouTube videos, all in the space of 2 years, which I think is pretty solid going, and it's always been free. And my aim has always been to make our free content better than other people's paid content, which sounds a little bit strange, but it's always been the goal I've had when I'm creating content. Because for me, education is critical, and the accumulation of my own knowledge, our team's knowledge, has all come from not only our experiences of working with people and working with ourselves, but continuously learning from industry titans and people we've looked up to for years. And so I only see it's our duty now to pay it forward and give back, which is why we put such a strong emphasis on service in everything we do. Now, the third one is self-mastery. If you've experienced the RNT transformation journey, or you're on the journey itself now, or you know anyone that's on the journey, you'll know that it's one that transcends the physical body change. It's ultimately a journey of self-mastery. Because by conquering the physical being, you develop the self, body, and life confidence that allows you to fulfill your potential in all areas of life. I've always seen the physical as the foundation because it creates the platform and the desire to achieve mastery in your mindset, your relationships, your career, and your overall health. And it really does transcend beyond that aesthetics, which, of course, we all love aesthetics. We all love looking good, feeling good. But it's always gone beyond that. And I really strongly believe that the RNT transformation journey is all about self-mastery. And it's a journey towards self-mastery, because accomplishing self-mastery is another thing, but it's the journey that we go towards it that is so rewarding. The fourth value is community. Now, for us, close relationships are non-negotiable. And whether that's between us in the team, with our clients, or in our personal lives with family and friends. And it's why community plays a pivotal role in creating the right environment for you to succeed in. Whether it's our buzzing Facebook group, which is always alive and kicking, whether it's our team get-togethers, or our client parties, which we've now started. We had a really fun and successful one in London on the 15th of June that just passed. Our next one will be, we've actually got a mini one coming together in Los Angeles in September. And then we'll have our Christmas one on the 30th of November in London. So next year, I really want to push these out there across the world. So if you're in a location, you know a couple of RNTers, let's get this together. So not only our client parties, but we've got our workshops, our group webinars, because we know the importance of surrounding yourself with like-minded people on similar journeys that you're going on. The fifth value is lifestyle. Now, a healthy and productive lifestyle can mean something different to everyone. Our RNT, it means living a life in your control that's in accordance of your core values while keeping physical and mental health as a high-ranking priority. Everything we do starts with looking after our body and mind, which is why we pay close attention to making your transformation as seamless with your lifestyle as possible. So we know you can maintain, develop, and build on your results at all times. So lifestyle can mean anything, but it means living the lifestyle that you want to live by, as opposed to having it enforced upon you, while at the same time making sure you're always taking care of yourself. And this is something we emphasize not only within our team, but in all our clients and their journeys that they go through. So those are the 5 core values that we really emphasize. And I've not really spoken about them openly as much as this. I've always touched on them in our blogs, in our case studies, in our podcasts, but it's been interesting this morning when I was walking. I was thinking, how can I explain them best? And these 5, impact, service, community, self-mastery, and lifestyle, really do embody everything we do, not only with our clients, but within our team and through our content, service, everything. It's those are the core values that we have at RNT. What I wanted to go into next was a little bit more into the mission and dive deeper into this, because again, I've touched on it here and there, but I've really spent time now crystallizing this and going deep into myself as to why this mission is so important for us. Because ultimately, when RNT first started, I always thought we were entering the online personal training and body transformation business. But after thinking about it over the years, speaking to our clients who experience our work, I've realized we're not just changing bodies, we're changing lives. And this realization first came to me 6 to 8 months after starting the company, when I began to receive scores of feedback emails from different clients all across the world who were raving about the benefits and changes they've seen since starting with us. What was interesting was how the focus of their feedback rarely fixated on their physical changes. It was everything else. It was their mental health, their mindset, their careers, their work, their family, their relationships, and so on. And a common theme was that the physical process of transforming the body provided the vehicle to make the necessary changes in other areas of their lives. Now, if I reflect back, this makes complete sense. And I've experienced this in myself over the past decades too, since I've started training. And if you can master your physical being, you'll have the confidence and courage to master any domain in your life. You'll have the inward focus and the positive habits in place to push forward in any area you want to improve in. And that's why I believe everyone should experience the life-changing coaching we're able to elicit, because I know how powerful improving and changing your body can be on your life. You know, the habits, the structure, the discipline it instills into you can set you up for success, in anything you do. Which is why now it's become my duty to spread the work of RNT to as many people as possible across the world. And that's essentially our mission at RNT. And one thing in that part about the mission is I want to talk about why the physical has been the vehicle for me personally. Because it was that personal experience that ultimately allowed it to cascade through RNT. But for me, when I first started training 10 years ago, it was all about improving. It always starts with aesthetics, but it's what the aesthetics gave me. And for me, it was self-confidence. You know, we've all heard the Moobs in a potbelly story. I had the Moobs in a potbelly. I remember sitting in swimming classes and I'd have rolls down my stomach and I'd see my moobs pointing out to the sides. And that, it was something I always wanted to change. So it started with aesthetics, but that gave me the confidence to then push hard in all areas of my life. So for me, it gave me the confidence to say no to law, to say no to the path that was laid out in front of me and take the road less traveled. And ultimately, when I conquered my physical being, it gave me that self-esteem, the self-confidence that essentially backed myself in following what I wanted to do and what I look back now and I know what I was here meant to do, and that was to spread this mission of using the physical as a vehicle for me. For you. Ultimately, it started with me. I realized the power of it. RNT was born a long time after. And then now I'm here spreading the message. But the reason the mission didn't come clear to me for so long was because ultimately at the beginning I thought it was all about aesthetics. And when I was personal trainer in the city, it was all about aesthetics at all costs. And the reason why I left the city as a personal trainer and set up RNT is because I knew it was more than that. And I wanted to create something that was much more than that, much more than just the before and after picture, much more than just the aesthetics, and really facilitate people to be able to take control of their lives and push forward in all areas. Because there's nothing like seeing someone fulfill their potential in areas that they wouldn't do before. And there's nothing that bothers me more than seeing unfulfilled potential and people not taking care of themselves, both physically, mentally, in all areas, which is where I really do think the physical acts as the foundation and the platform to transform elsewhere. Now, for me, the physical, my why for training has evolved. You know, it started with the confidence factor, the body transformation, but now it's become a way of being a high performer, a way of staying sharp. And I really do believe that how you do one thing is how you do everything. And I've noticed when my training, my nutrition, my general activity is on point, everything else in my life is much better. My relationships, my energy, my work, my productivity, my creativity. In fact, right now, in preparation for my upcoming photo shoot in 3-4 weeks' time, I'm at my most productive and most creative I've ever been. And it's an amazing feeling. And training hard and making it a non-negotiable for myself is really about everything else. It's about being a high performer. And I found that the harder I train, the more I push myself, the deeper I think, the deeper I'm able to introspect, reflect, and find out more about myself, what I enjoy, what I don't enjoy, what I need to improve on, what my challenges are, mistakes I'm making. And it's really allowing me to go into myself that in ways that I've not done before. And it all comes from the more I push myself physically. For example, when I train with no distractions. So there's no messaging going on, and I really try and internalize everything I'm doing, from mind-muscle connection to playing out the set beforehand to visualization. But as I'm doing this, I'm connecting to myself on a deeper level, and I find that the more I do this, the more present I am, the better quality of life I'm living. And another area that I've really noticed is in cardio and steps. And when I keep these habits ruthlessly consistent and use that time alone, I really get that period of solitude that we're missing in most day-to-day living, because in such a digitally connected world, it's so hard to find that ultimately inner peace. And what I find is when I go for long walks, when I push myself to the limit with training, I get that sense of solitude and recharge that I can't get from anything else. Some people get it from meditation. Some people get it from other stimulus or lack of. But for me, that's why the physical transformation and continuously improving your physical being is so important to me. And there's also something to be said for following the process, ticking the boxes, and creating a sense of self-esteem from it. Because I know if I don't push myself for the extra rep, no one else is going to know. If I don't hit my step target, no, who cares? If I eat a bad meal, no one's going to judge me, but I'll judge myself. And by ticking the boxes, by nailing all the variables, it creates a sense of self-esteem. And this is something I've really come to learn in the last year in myself, in that the more I'm on it with my training, my nutrition, my cardio, my steps, my daily habits, my water, everything, the higher sense of self-esteem I have, because I know I'm taking care of myself and I'm ticking the boxes when no one's looking, if that makes sense. And these are all just personal reflections. So some of you may be able to relate to some of this, and some of you may think it's completely unrelatable. But this has been the evolution of my why with my own training, and why the act of physical transformation and the physical focus, more than anything, is still a vehicle for the greater good in my life. And what I want to touch on next is just switching gears, and I have to use that phrase even though I'm alone here, is talk about the RNT journey and how, in order to use the physical as a vehicle, you have to go through a journey. And this journey is, having worked with so many people, having spoken to so many people, is more predictable than you think. And it really works through 5 phases. Which, by the way, before I go into it, everyone should read the 5 phases article and listen to the specific 5 phases podcast, which will be linked in the show notes. But I'm going to give you a brief overview of them from my perspective here. So phase 1 is all about cleaning the palate. And this is all about regaining control of your day, building habits, building routine, creating non-negotiables. It's about asking yourself, how do I do this? So you need to create a strategy, a system, a structure that works for you. And it's about minimizing decision fatigue and automating a lot of processes that you might do in your life in order to get the wheels in motion and start gathering momentum, which then carries over into the process phase, which is phase number 2. And this is all about pushing hard towards your initial goals, which are typically, in most cases, fat loss, and achieving that transformation checkpoint. And it's asking yourself, how hard can I push myself here? And it's in this process phase that you'll experience the different psychologies behind dieting, the mind games, the mind tricks. You'll experience questions from other people around you. Potential social stigmas will be placed. And you'll experience the grind. And it's in this process phase that you learn a lot about yourself and how hard you can really push beyond what you thought was the limit beforehand. Right up till you reach that checkpoint, and then you go into phase 3, which is consolidation. Now, when you reach the checkpoint, your confidence is higher than it's ever been. Your self-esteem is sky high. You feel good. You look good. And you've realized the power of a physical transformation. But now comes the hard bit. It's consolidation time. It's phase 3, consolidation. And it's the critical period of maintaining what you've achieved And it's asking yourself, how do I keep what I've built? Now, it's in this period you develop insights into yourself like never before, and you discover your likes, you discover your dislikes, and you really have to battle in order to maintain where you've got to. And it's a very difficult period, but one which, if you can get through, you really set yourself up for success going forwards, and it'll build a foundation that will give you the confidence to really push on and make considerable progress in the next phase, which is investment. Now, the investment phase can go two ways. It can be heavy on the muscle building, or it can be all about refining the lifestyle solutions that have got you to where you are now. And ultimately, there is a blend between the two, but the psychology of where you've come from, your background, your age, all the different factors in your life will determine how aggressively you muscle build versus how much you focus on creating a lifestyle solution, and ultimately learning how to maintain your gains as easy as possible, which is a goal in itself and very difficult to achieve. But again, once you go through this phase, once you are able to do so, there's so much you've learned about yourself. There's so much you could take forward that it really is an investment into yourself, which is why we call it the investment phase. And in this phase, it's all about progressively overloading the weight on the bar, the food on the plate, if you're a muscle builder, or progressively overloading how well you can cope in social situations, how well you can buffer, how well you can stay in shape year round, how well you can tick the boxes when there's no immediate goal of a photo shoot or a holiday or a wedding. This is all about investing in yourself to be able to really reap the benefits of the physical focus. And it's easy to get lost in this phase, but it's important to know why you're doing this phase and the benefits that will come in the future, which is phase 5, the reward phase. And this is the time to really enjoy being in the shape of your life, for life. But it's also about continuously making improvements and continuously embarking on that journey of self-mastery. Because now you're asking yourself, well, you've gone from asking yourself in the investment phase, how do I build on this, to the reward phase, which is how can I keep getting better? Now, after a decade of training, I'm very much in this reward phase. And the reward phase does involve, you can still go through the hard diets, the hard building phases, but it's done from a different place, because you do it from a place of wanting to push yourself harder, wanting to master your body to another level, wanting to always think, how can I improve my systems, my strategies, my structure? How can I be the best version? And it's a different approach to when you're in phase 1 and phase 2, where it's about the aesthetics. It's a new journey. Everything's fresh. You're still trying to find your feet. Whereas now it's a very different place to be in. But it's the reward phase for a reason, because I think you gain more introspection, more rewards, and people around you benefit from it more than ever. And those are the 5 phases that everyone will go through along a transformation journey, especially specifically on an RNT transformation journey. Now, where we come into this journey is 2 ways. The first way is the coaching and mentorship. And we use our knowledge on training, nutrition, lifestyle requirements to guide you on how to execute the physical change in each phase. But also, it's creating the very high levels of accountability because we hold you accountable through check-ins, feedback, ongoing communication, so you can stay on track with your goals and continually internalize your focus that's necessary to achieve these goals and take action every single day. And then what this leads to through this combination is total transformation, whereby you feel, look, and perform your best. You have sky high, improved level of self-confidence, and you're able to fulfill your potential in all areas of your life. And that's essentially the RNT transformation journey and how we as coaches help guide you through this. Now, in all of this, we've talked about the company story, we've talked about the mission, the values, the journey. I want to touch on some of the mistakes I've made from a business point of view. What have I struggled with most? And also something which is particularly vulnerable is what scares me. I'm going to start with mistakes because that was asked twice on the IG stories, and I know a lot of people are interested in this. And specifically, I was asked, what would I change going back? If I can go back in time, over the course of the past 2.5 years at RNT, what would I change? I would say there's 3 key things that stand out here. The first one is to always have difficult conversations earlier than you end up having them. Don't put them off. Don't procrastinate. And this is me telling myself here. If I was to go back a year and a half, 2 years ago, I would tell myself, have that difficult conversation earlier. Because the longer you leave it, the more animosity that creeps in, the more frustration that creeps in, the more resentment, when it could easily be squashed with just having a difficult conversation. And now I'm so much better at it, and I'd much rather have it before than later. But there have been times when I've let things stew for months and months and months, and it's really eaten up on me inside. I'm not sure on the exact phrase to use there, but number one would be have difficult conversations earlier. And it's a very generic piece of advice to give to myself, but it's something that if I'd known that earlier, I would have it would have saved a lot of stress. But similarly, moving on to the second one would be always set clear expectations right from the beginning. And this is something I'm still struggling with, and I need to get better at. And while every time I am getting better at, if I go right back in time, I would always make sure there's no gray areas. There's crystal clear expectations with everyone I work with, whether it's business partners, team members, clients, friends, family, everyone. It can apply to anything in my life, but always set clear expectations from the beginning, so there's never any doubts or gray areas that may creep in otherwise. And the third one would be to unlock flow and build a team around me quicker behind the scenes. Now, what I mean by that is, I know that I'm very much a creative person in my work. I love to create content. I love to write, record podcasts. But my limiting factor has always been the administrative side of things. So I would say, if I was to go back in time, the one thing I would change is hire people to help me behind the scenes with the administrative side of things a lot earlier than I did. See, I waited till when was the first time I put an advert out? I think I waited till after I had my episode of Burnout, and it took a collapse for me to realize that I needed I couldn't do everything myself, and ultimately, if I'd done it a year earlier, it would have completely changed the game for me. And it took me nearly 2 years in business to hire someone to help me behind the scenes outside of coaching, which is more front end. But it took a collapse for me to realize that I can't do everything myself and that I need to bring on more help. And now building a team behind the scenes has been an absolute game changer. And it's what's allowed me essentially to see the forest for the trees more and be able to take time to recharge, take time to strategize, and unlock more time to be in flow, which is when I feel best, where I feel best. It's when I'm writing, when I'm creating content, when I'm working with clients and doing what I really enjoy, what I'm passionate about. I know I don't like the admin side of things, the boring bits, what I personally find boring, but what other people love doing. And it's about finding and unlocking that flow. I would have done that a lot earlier than I did now. And going back, that would be the one thing, is I would have built a team much quicker than I did, as opposed to thinking that I could do this myself. But ultimately, it's this sort of cliche, but it is all a learning journey. And I think if I didn't hit that red line where I realized I couldn't do it myself, I wouldn't have realized how much I needed to build that team. So I've always thought of this RNT journey that I've been on as essentially a spiritual journey, and I've grown in myself more than I could have ever imagined. And every 3 to 6 months, when I do my quarterly insights, when I look back over my journals, I always think, wow, like there's been so many lessons and so many mistakes I've made and so many challenges that I've had to push myself through that have ultimately just continued to put me on this path of self-mastery, which comes back to the value that we spoke about earlier. That spiritual journey and the learning journey that I've had over the past 2 years is something that I wouldn't trade for anything. So while I can go back in time, and it sounds so cliched, it's they've all been game-changing lessons, and they've all allowed me to then push on and become better. So what I've when I was thinking about these mistakes, the other thing I thought about is, and I was asked quite a lot, is what do I struggle with most behind the scenes? And what are my biggest struggles? And I would say, again, it comes down to a couple of things which are related to these mistakes. And the first one is the inability to celebrate the small wins and constantly flirting with the red line. And when I say the red line, I mean pushing myself too far that my body essentially shuts down. But this is a skill that I'm getting better and better at. But the inability to celebrate small wins is something I've always struggled with, and I continue to struggle with. And while I think I'm getting better at it, for example, booking this manor for the weekend could be seen as a small win celebration. but it's something I need to build in more. And ultimately, it comes down to the art of feeling content. And that's probably my biggest struggle that I have, is never really feeling content. I don't celebrate the small wins. I always push myself too far. And I struggle with sometimes just doing nothing and just enjoying being. Like, I'm always thinking, what's next? What's next? What's next? And some may argue it's a good quality, but it's something I really struggle with. And I've always wondered where this has come from. In my mind, I'm always thinking more. What can I do more of? How can I do more? What can I do more? And this isn't materialistic in any way. Like, anyone who knows me will know I'm not a materialistic person in any sense. Money doesn't motivate me at all, really. It's something else, and it's about creating. How can I create more impact? How can I be better? And what I've realized is my why in business has changed and evolved a lot in the last 6 to 9 months. The mission of RNT is very clear. But my why in business, my personal why, has evolved into this real sense of self-improvement and just trying to be better and just trying to push myself to another level, trying to learn and understand myself and see how I can respond to challenges and see how I can deal with challenges, because it's very much a journey of self-improvement, self-mastery, and seeing how I can help build RNT to create maximum impact. Because I've always thought, I don't have many materialistic demands. Instead of, I don't do business for that. For me, if I don't need much, let's see how we can make other people's lives better. And that's always been my philosophy in this. And what I've come to realize especially the last 6 months, and really the time I've been spending more time off the grid recently. And by that, I mean disconnecting from WhatsApp, email, and just spending more time internalizing and spending more time introspectively. And I realized that for me, my why is purely about trying to be better and trying to improve and see what can be done. Because I think my biggest fear is in not fulfilling my potential. It's being scared that I'm leaving things on the table. And I think that comes back to the whole more, and the whole never feeling content, always thinking what's next. And it all comes from this fear of not fulfilling my potential. And I've been thinking more and more, and I've been going deep into this as to why, where this has come from, why it's there. I think a lot of it stems back to when I first got into the fitness industry. It was very much against the societal norm in my community at the time. Even my head of year was like, "Are you sure about this?" And I think for a long time it was about trying to prove a point to my family, to my peers, and when I say peers, not in the industry, but people that were around me, to the old head teacher, to my parents, and trying to prove a point that I can do this. And I think for a long period of time, that was the reason why I continued to push. And what that evolved into was this own realization journey that now I feel I'm on. And that's why I say that this RNT journey for me in the past 2.5 years has been very spiritual, because it's been about exploring myself to a higher level and learning and understanding more and more about myself and the potential impact that we can create together as a team. If I add on to this whole feeling of more, to this feeling of never feeling content, there's also something to be said for this joy and this addiction to the grind. And I know I've got this addiction to the grind, because for me, I'm one of those people where if on Friday I'm not completely exhausted, I don't feel like I've worked hard enough. Or if I'm not feeling mentally challenged, if I'm not physically challenged through the week, I don't feel like I'm doing anything. And it's probably it probably stems from why I love bodybuilding as well, because bodybuilding and pushing yourself to the extreme in bodybuilding is all about how much suffering can you take, because you're self-inflicting starvation onto yourself. It's very much a first world privilege to be able to bodybuild, because you're denying yourself a food and you're pushing yourself to the extreme with activity, and you're seeing how low you can take your body fat. But with that, especially in the last 4 weeks of a competition prep, you really do have to lean into it, and you have to lean into the challenge, and you have to enjoy that grind. And there's something to be said for that grind that is very addictive. And that's what's carried over for me into my work. And it's why I never settle. It's why I always think, what's next? Because for me, let's use the example of bodybuilding. And as I am now dieting for a shoot in September, which is only a few weeks away, it's about sharpening the axe. It's about seeing how far I can push myself. It's about developing future higher pain threshold. How much can I push myself towards? Because again, it comes back to the whole physical is a vehicle. If I can push myself hard physically, I know I can push myself hard in business, in work, in my relationships, in everything else. And I've found the more I think about this, I'm happiest when I'm grinding. Now, some of you may listen to that and think, Akash, you've got to chill out. You've got to learn to just be content, be chilled. And I've really thought about that. And I've spoken to people who have a similar personality, and they can relate to this joy in the grind and the joy in that feeling of suffering. Now, I don't like to use the word suffering, because there are people out there genuinely suffering, but this is like that self-inflicted type where you want to see how far you can push yourself, and that's all this really comes down to. You want to see what you can do, how far you can take it, and I think that's where I draw meaning from. I draw the real meaning from now is what can I do here? And the way I find my balance now is in times like this, where I'm off the grid, I'm off the radar, and I spend time in myself. I spend time finding that meaning, finding that inner core. And to me, that gives me a lot of balance. That for other people, it may be partying till 3 a.m. or taking long vacations, and that's completely fine. And what I've realized is everyone has their own method of recharging, of switching off, of finding balance. To me, it's creating that lifestyle for myself where I can be in flow, I can create, I can have impact, I can serve, I can be on my own journey of self-mastery, I can improve, I can build the relationships that I want. And when I just said that, I've just realized that the 5 core values that I mentioned at the beginning and throughout have all come into play. And I'm probably going to leave it there because I'm starting to ramble now. I think I'm starting to lose my train of thought here as the caffeine wears off. But what I want to finish on, again, this is for ultra high levels of accountability, but also because I want to let everyone know who's listening, is I've always had this goal to put all my thoughts on the journey, the RNT transformation journey, the 5 phases, into a book. And I've been spending time in the last few weeks really mapping it out, creating the skeleton, jotting down ideas, got my own notes folder now open. Because I know there's 2 types of writers. There's the type of writer that just writes, and then there's the type of writer that spends a long time writing the skeleton out, sharpening the axe. And I know I'm definitely that type of writer. Even when I do my articles, I always have a skeleton first and then go for it. And it's always been one of my biggest goals for the last 10 years is to write a book. And my goal is to write this book in the 4th quarter of this year, really dive into it and use it as another part of becoming better, finding myself more. And I want to release it for the 30th anniversary of RNT. That's the goal. Putting out there on this podcast today. If you're still listening, I hope, then you can hold me to it. But it's something that the wheels are in motion, and I'm really, really excited for this next chapter and exploring and seeing what can be made of the book. The plan of the book is not finalized, so I'll give more details as I go along, because I want to document the journey of it, because I think that would be a really cool way of doing it, as I know there's going to be a lot of dips and there's going to be periods where I'll hit the writer's block, as I do with many articles. But this is a whole different ballgame. So excited to see what happens. If you enjoyed today's episode, please let me know. I've gone on for an hour. I didn't expect that for that to happen. I thought it would be 30 minutes, but it's been a good experience recording this solo episode. I'll be very intrigued to know your thoughts. So please drop me an email on podcast@rntfitness.com, or my personal email if you have it. And I'd love to hear from you on your thoughts. If you feel other people can relate to some of the stories I've mentioned today, please share it with them. Leave us a positive review. And thank you. Thanks for listening. If you've made it this far, really appreciate all your time. And I'll speak to you soon. Thank you.